All right. And the person who was in the waiting room disappeared. So
Of course.
okay. Kane's in the house.
Okay, I just saw Keen earlier today at SJCU.
We should have some waiting music.
Oh, I know. Do you wanna?
Let's see if I can pull something out.
Well, yeah,
Let's
we
see.
definitely need some lobby music.
I know some little do 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 do. Okay. What about this?
Thank you, Keen. Oh, no, it's Pia. Hi, Pia.
Oh, it's Pia. Pia in the question and answer section. All right. For those of you who in our webinar already, hello and welcome. We're going to take a few minutes just to kind of let people filter in, and then we will go ahead and get started. I am looking up some lobby waiting music for us to listen to while we wait. Found this Spotify playlist called Mellow Cello. Let's do that.
I'm all for it.
Can you hear that? No?
No.
Oh, okay. So let's try this again. What if I play it through here? Maybe now?
I heard something.
Okay. No, it's not working. Well, I gave it a shot.
All good.
I could do some beatboxing for us while we wait.
I think that that's for a different workshop.
All right. And while folks are sitting here waiting for us to get started, I'm going to drop this demographic survey in the chat for folks. This is a survey that we have folks take when they attend our workshops. It just kind of helps us continue to be able to, give out these workshops for folks and to, be able to continue to do the work that we do at the Q Corner. So that way we can better support the folks who attend our workshops in the future. So if you can, take a quick moment to fill out the survey monkey that you see that I just dropped in the chat. And I'll go ahead and put it in the chat again towards the end of our time together as well. Okay, it is 5:35, so I'm going to have us get started.
Okay.
For those of you who are just joining, hello, welcome. My name is Alyssa. I use they, them pronouns. I am a community outreach specialist here at the Q Corner. And today I'm very excited to be joined along with Justin. from Heart, who will be teaching us this incredible workshop, Navigating Healthy Queer Relationships. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Justin. Before I do, just remember, if you are able to fill out the Survey Monkey that is in the chat, please do so either at the end of our session or if you have some time at the end of our session. Okay. All right, Justin, it's all you.
All right. Thank you, Alyssa, for that lovely introduction. Again, my name is Justin. I'm the program coordinator for HEART, which stands for Healthy, Equitable, and Respectful Together. I use he, him pronouns. And today, just like we mentioned, we're going to be talking all about navigating healthy queer relationships. And what's really unique about this workshop and what I'm really excited to talk about is that we're going to talk about building positive connections of all different relationship configurations. So not just romantic partnerships, but we'll talk about relationships across the board, including healthy friendships, healthy family relationships, healthy relationships with folks that you might see in school or in work. And of course, this workshop is going to have an LGBTQ plus focus and a lens with it. And we're going to be talking about all of the unique qualities of relationships that we experience and that we have. But if you are just joining us as an ally as well, there will be, of course, little pieces of here that will apply to all relationships across the board. So without further ado, I think I am ready to just jump right into it and get to the good stuff. So a little bit of what you can expect from our time together and from our workshop. I'll spend just a few minutes introducing me and Heart, and so you have a good idea of who it is that is going to be yapping with you for the next hour or so. I'll go over a bit of Heart's program overview so that you have a good idea of who we are as a resource for you in the future. I have a couple group norms set, but I'm not sure that we'll really need them for today since I'll mostly be doing a lot of the talking. But with that being said, I do want to make sure that we're just all on the same page since we are going to be talking about relationships. Heart is an intimate partner violence prevention program, and we might be discussing some sensitive topics as well. So the main gist of what we're going to be speaking about today are why healthy relationships are so important. We'll talk about some healthy signs of relationships, some foundations of a healthy relationship, again, of all different configurations. And then, of course, considering that Heart is an intimate partner violence prevention program, we'll briefly touch on how to identify abuse or unsafe relationships. And then I'll talk a little bit about supporting someone in an unsafe relationship. But I've structured this in a way to talk about fostering healthy communication as well. So you'll see some things that cross in that sense. And then to close off our workshop, we'll be talking about some LGBTQ plus specific resources related to fostering healthy relationships and intimate partner violence prevention. And then of course, at the end, we will save some time for questions. I'll give you my contact information if you have any questions related to healthy relationships, Heart, and all the services that we offer. And yeah, that's a bit of what y'all can expect from me today. Again, I want to get into all the fun stuff, so I will get my cute little glam shot up here on the screen. A little bit about me again, I'm the program coordinator for Heart. What brought me to working with Heart and why I'm so passionate about the work that I do comes from my background getting a degree in health education sexuality studies at San Francisco State. Through there, I had a lot of experiences working in youth spaces, education programs. I've even worked in clinics and I've done pride events, but nothing quite really resonated with me as much as doing the community outreach related to healthy relationship building. As a survivor myself and as someone who is so passionate about speaking to healthy relationships of all different configurations. I do work double duty, so I support our Heart program, but I also work with our LGBTQ Youth Spaces Speakers Bureau. So if you're not familiar with our youth space, essentially it's a drop-in center based in San Jose, and our Speakers Bureau is a volunteer program at the youth space. And it's just a great place to share your story as an LGBTQ plus person. If you're interested in that, we can talk about that later. But for the purpose of this workshop, again, I like to say that I'm a health educator by day and an artist by night, because if I am not doing fun workshops like this one, I am usually spending my free time hosting a drag show with my partner who also does drag, talk about healthy relationships, right? So we do that. And that's kind of a little bit about me in a nutshell. I've said Heart a few times already. I've told you a little bit about what it is that Heart does, but just to give you a more in-depth program overview so you have a good idea of what it is that we'll be talking about today. Heart specifically focuses on working towards safe and healthy relationships for all. And I'm doing this through a prevention and a harm reduction lens. So a lot of the services that we offer include workshops like this one and presentations, although we do have the capacity to offer one-on-one meetings as well. And I can also refer folks to individual resources that they may need, such as housing support, mental health services, and food connections as well. If you have any questions for me or for Heart, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we can get to them in the built-in breaks that we have. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Before we get into the great content, just some group norms to make sure that we are making this a safe space for everyone. Again, I mentioned we will be talking about healthy relationships. We will be discussing some forms of abuse, so I want to make sure that this is a safe space for everyone. I encourage you to come as you are. Essentially, what that means is that if you are going to be sharing in the chat or if you are going to be sharing in the Q&A, I encourage you just to be mindful of what you might be saying in these spaces, just because you want to make sure that we aren't activating others, we aren't triggering others when we're talking about these sensitive topics, and when we're speaking in greater detail, because again, we may discuss forms of abuse. So if you have any concerns or if you need to step out for a second, I won't take it personally. I encourage you to take any breaks that you need and feel free to excuse yourself as needed. I love questions. Feel free to utilize that Q&A feature. And again, I have some built-in breaks within our workshop to make sure that we get any questions that you have answered. And last but not least, again, we all have to work together to create a safe space where we can all feel comfortable sharing. So what is said here stays here, but what is learned here can leave here. How does that sound? I see thumbs up from Melissa, and that's all the validation that I need. Thank you. And I see a couple hearts. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Again, I'll be doing most of the chatting today, but if you are able to utilize the chat feature, I would love to get to know some of the folks who are in the room today. So if you feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to know what's your name and your pronouns and what is the most important quality in a healthy relationship for you. There are no wrong answers at this time. I can give you a bit of a snapshot to my answer. I think in this moment in time, if I'm thinking about the most important quality of a healthy relationship for me, I would say I think I would say communication. I know it's a common one, but communication is something that I've been really working towards improving with my own personal relationships, and I'm really proud of how that's going. So I think that I would say that that's the most important quality for me. Again, feel free to think about this as we are going through these different scenarios and different workshop qualities related to healthy relationships. And if any of them apply to you, I'd love to know. But
So
yeah.
I have a couple that are in our
Oh,
question
yes.
box.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I'm just realizing that the chat is actually disabled from their perspective. So they're probably like, what do you mean use the chat? But I have from one person I got keen, they, them, an important quality of a healthy relationship is kindness. And yeah, that's what I have so far. Again, you can utilize the question box as a way to get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you for monitoring that, Alyssa, and thank you, Keen, for sharing. But yeah, keep them coming. Like I said, this will be an open conversation throughout the workshop, so feel free to chime in as you'd like. So the first part of this workshop I've broken down into nurturing healthy relationships. And the reason why I think it's so important that we even talk about why healthy relationships are significant or why it's so important that we talk about the quality of our healthy relationships is because ultimately, of course, they do affect our mental, our emotional, and our physical health. I have a bunch of different stats here and things related to why healthy relationships are so significant. But if there are a few that I can point out that I think are most relevant, of course, is that knowing how to foster healthy relationships, knowing what qualities you want to hold yourselves and others accountable to, is important in preventing violence and preventing unsafety in relationships. I think it's important that I point out also that abuse and violence can be more than just physical, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And a lot of the times we think about unsafe relationships just being involved with romantic partnerships, but of course, unsafe relationships can happen to anyone. They can affect any one of us, regardless of our age, our gender, or our identities, which is why I think it's so important that we even talk about what healthy relationships can look like. And of course, as LGBTQ plus folks, there's a lot of actually, I said there was a lot. There are not a lot of models available to show us what healthy relationships look like. I know I might age myself a little bit here, but I know that my first example of seeing what an LGBTQ plus relationship looked like was in Glee, when it was airing live on television when I was in middle school. And that's kind of like what I grew up with, thinking about what a queer relationship could look like. And of course, it felt tumultuous. There was a whole different issue to dive into there, but there's not a lot of models there to show us what a healthy relationship can look like. So that's why I think it's so important that we have these conversations just so that we're able to know what it is that we should hold ourselves accountable to and what it is that we should look for. Of course, when we talk about healthy relationships, we're able to become agents of change in our own way when we're able to inform others about what unsafe relationships might look like. And again, I'll talk about how to support unsafe or folks in unsafe relationships later in this workshop. But we want to know how to support our peers. And of course, we want to contribute to resources that aid survivors, especially as folks in the LGBTQ plus community. And again, at the end of this workshop, I'll spend some time going to some more specific resources related to supporting our community within Santa Clara County. Which will be great. And of course, healthy relationships build compassion, intimacy, and security. And ultimately, if there's anything that I want you to leave this workshop knowing, is that you deserve to feel safe and respected in all of your relationships, regardless of that is romantic partnerships, platonic relationships. Of course, we can prevent violence for generations to come when we are able to foster these healthy relationships all across the board. Okay, so I talked a little bit about what some different relationships can look like for us. I've kind of broken it down here into a ever-flowing chart or line, if you will. Relationships can come in all different forms, whether that's with our romantic partners, whether that's with people that we are dating, with people that we are seeing casually. We can make relationships with our friends. We are building relationships essentially with anyone that we are coming into contact with on a regular basis. So that might be our coworkers, those might be the folks that we live with, those might be our classmates. Of course, we have relationships with our family, whether those are our family related to us through blood or our chosen family. We are creating all of these relationships all the time. If you are having questions about who it is that we are creating relationships with and who we're forming these connections with, I like to think of the bucket scenario, if you will, which is used very popularly when young folks, and especially like kindergartners or first graders, are learning about building connections and fostering healthy friendships. When we're thinking about relationships, both in a positive and in a negative way, think about who is filling your bucket, so to say. So if you have a imaginary bucket that you carry with you every day, just like in this bottom left corner of your screen, and folks that you are making relationships with, if they are filling your bucket with love and admiration and they're making you feel valued, you have healthy connections with them, you're able to communicate with them in a safe way, they are filling your bucket, they're making you feel whole, they're making you feel full. But of course, there are relationships that might take away from that and might make you feel more light and more anxious. And this is what we will equate a little bit to unsafe relationships or maybe to red flags, which I'll talk about coming up now. Okay, so breaking down relationships into healthy and unsafe signs. I have a non-exhaustive list here, but these are some of the more common ones that I want to focus on for today's relationship workshop. All interpersonal relationships, again, whether they're platonic or romantic, are valid as long as they're safe and consensual, and even in small ways, showing others that we care for them can be really meaningful and is key to building strong connections. So feel free to sound off in the Q&A if you'd like, since the chat is disabled, about any other healthy signs or red flags that you might might come to mind for you if they're not listed here. But I'm going to spend some time going over these so that we're able to have a good starting point on identifying what healthy relationships might look like compared to unsafe relationships. So some healthy relationships could be having a safe and valued way of communicating with folks and having trust in a relationship. Keen, I know you mentioned in the Q&A that kindness was an important quality for you, and I think that that comes into play with how you communicate with folks and how you build trust. This, I think, relates also very well to non-threatening behavior. So what this means is you are able to feel safe with someone. You're able to communicate with them in a way that doesn't make you feel scared, or you're able to communicate with them in a way where you are able to trust that you will be able to have a response that you are able to work through. And this also coincides very well with setting and respecting boundaries. Having safe conflict resolution is a way of fostering healthy communication. And what this looks like is having open communication, open conversations, being receptive to hearing other folks' side of the story, and of course, being able to feel understood and connected on the same way. Shared contributions in all relationships is also really important. So this means that there is equality. You feel like you are contributing to a relationship in a way, but folks are on the other side are also contributing to the relationship. Being able to express your individuality and agency is important, and I'll talk a little bit about why this is important. But essentially, what this means is being able to still have time for yourself in a relationship, being able to still express your desires and your interests, and being able to share that with someone is really important in a healthy relationship. And the 5 A's, which I will go into following this slide. But looking on the other side here, of course, we have some red flags on what unsafe relationships might look like. So when we're thinking about unsafe relationships or what abusive relationships might look like, there's a couple common themes here. A lot of the time, these relationships either exhibit controlling behavior. There might be violence or abuse of any kind. So whether that's physical violence, sexual violence, emotional violence, maybe the partner that you are with is criticizing you or they are constantly disrespecting you. This might be a red flag for an unsafe relationship. Feeling isolated and or drained in a relationship. Maybe your partner or your friends or your family have a lack of support or empathy. Maybe you feel like you're constantly isolated or alone, even though you are physically there with them or you're talking to them, and you're still feeling that lack of support there. A lot of the time, constant drama or chaos is also a sign of an unsafe relationship. Gaslighting is a big common theme that I get a lot of questions about as of recent. And a lot of the times, unsafe relationships have a more so common theme of power and control imbalances. So this is just a snapshot of healthy and unsafe signs to kind of give you an idea of where this conversation will go. But for the purpose of this workshop, I want to focus on what I like to call the 5 A's of a healthy relationship. And I curated these because I think that they apply most to LGBTQ plus folks across the board, with a lot of the relationships that we're building romantically with our family, and with the friends that we're making. So I'm going to go through each of these, and if you have a favorite, feel free to sound off. I would love to know. I'll let you know which mine is in a sec. But just to start us off, I think it's important that we focus on attention in a relationship. So what this means is having someone who actively listens and understands you while also being able to do the same, and being able to have conversations about what your feelings are and your needs are vulnerably. And giving full attention, of course, makes us feel valued and loved. And my personal favorite, which is acceptance. I think that this is extremely significant, especially for folks within the LGBTQ plus community. It's important that we love and respect each other unconditionally, whether that's embracing our quirks, our individuality, and feeling accepted, because this creates a safe environment. Mini story time. I was in a relationship many years ago with someone who was not very fond of me wearing makeup, or was not very fond of me wearing my Ariana Grande t-shirts when we went out or whatnot, because it presented too feminine for them. But luckily, my partner that I'm with now has never questioned any of those interests that I have, and it expresses me for both my feminine habits and my masculine habits and everything in between. And I think that that's something that's really important to me when I'm thinking about what the 5 A's of a healthy relationship are for me. So I think acceptance is really key. It's important that someone is accepting you as a whole person with all of your quirks and all of your personality traits, because it ties in perfectly into the next A, which is appreciation. So this is being able to acknowledge and voice appreciation for others' talents, their efforts, and their kindness. This kind of goes in line if you're familiar with the concept of love languages. So showing appreciation, whether that's verbally or through appreciation, is really important because it fosters love and respect. Um, this ties in, of course, with affection, and it looks different for all of us. So I think it's important that we, of course, ask folks what they prefer when we're talking about affection, whether this means showing affection through words of affirmation or physical touch. Essentially, in a nutshell, being able to show affection just helps us build intimacy by showing our appreciation in ways that are meaningful to each person. And again, we each have our different ways that we like to show and receive affection. For example, I like physical touch, but my partner prefers words of affirmation. So he makes sure to hold my hand if I need it, and I make sure to let him know when I think he's done something really awesome. And that's a way of showing words of affirmation. Next would be allowing, and this looks like supporting others and being themselves without judgment or control. Again, this kind of relates a little bit to acceptance and appreciation. And essentially, this just builds trust and encourages personal growth. I see a couple questions in the chat. I will get to them in just a moment, but I'm letting you know that I do see them. Okay, so before we get to those, I want to talk a little bit about platonic and romantic relationships, just because I think it's so important that we acknowledge that romantic partnerships might not apply to all of us, and that is completely okay because either way, we're still building relationships and connections with all of the folks that we frequently speak to. And it's also rare to even get everything that we want from one specific person, because this helps set realistic expectations and reduces pressure on your relationships. So, for example, you might have a friend that you like to go try the new coffee spots with, right? But you also have another friend that you feel like you can confide in when you have something serious going down or you just got some tea to spill. So it's rare to get everything that you want from one specific person. I think it's important that we acknowledge that, especially in a romantic partnership. I think that's why it's so important to keep your chosen family close and to have those friends so that you're able to have different outlets to express all of the different interests that you have. So this relates a little bit to the platonic companions that we build connections with because most of the time they're often interested in spending time together, just being great friends and supporting each other. However, again, I do want to mention that any relationship can range from healthy to unhealthy, romantic or otherwise. So this means that including platonic relationships in our discussions about healthy relationships, of course, we can include our folks on the aromantic spectrum in this important conversation because healthy relationships apply to us across the board. All of these healthy signs and unsafe signs, they are not strictly related to romantic partnerships. So I think it's important that we acknowledge these relationships as well so that we're able to foster healthy connections for all of us. I have been yapping for a minute, so I'm gonna take a quick sec. But yeah, okay, building and maintaining relationships. So how can we foster these healthy relationships that we have now that I know how to identify healthy signs and we know what we want to hold ourselves accountable to in relationships? A lot of the time, the relationships that we build, whether they're platonic or romantic, can benefit on building communities. So what this means is that strengthening our bonds and creating a sense of belonging can come in many different ways. Whether that is through expressing our shared interests, having effort and commitment, and of course, embracing growth and change. I'll go into depth of these a little bit, but I won't spend too much time on them because I'm sure we all have a good idea of what it is that we like to express ourselves with in relationships and what we want to expect from folks. But having shared interests with our friends and with our partners and with their family can always help jumpstart relationships and help strengthen them. So if you're having trouble building healthy relationships, I encourage you to take advantage of the places that you frequent and the people that you see often. If you're participating in groups and supports and socials with the Q Corner, with other awesome organizations, take advantage of the folks that you see often and build those connections with the folks that you are speaking to and that you're sharing space with. When you advance to healthier relationships and more stronger connections, having that effort, commitment, and of course, embracing growth and change is really important because as adults, life gets busy, but the true connections and true friends that we have understand time lapses. You make effort to reconnect. And of course, making room for growth and change is important because we are all fluid and we're constantly changing and evolving. So it's important that the relationships that you have are making time to also accept you for those changes as well. Okay, so one more piece before we go into questions for this portion. I did touch on this a little bit, but I do want to emphasize that it's important to remember and prioritize yourself in a relationship. And what I mean by this is practicing self-love and care, because a lot of the time, especially in romantic partnerships, I know I'm guilty of it. We often think that we must have to sacrifice our own needs to sustain a relationship, whether that is blowing off our friends to go on a date or blowing off certain aspects of our interests because we want to spend more time with the relationship. But it's important that we're making time for ourselves because this allows us to also support others more authentically as well. So self-care, I know it sounds cheesy, it might sound corny, but it includes activities that support emotional or psychological and social well-being. And it doesn't always have to be something grand. For me, for example, self-care just looks like my nighttime routine when I have that half hour to myself to do my skincare and watch a Desperate Housewives before bed. So I think it's important that you have that time to reconnect with yourself just so that you're able to strengthen the relationship that you have with yourself, so that you're able to show up more authentically in your other relationships. And again, it doesn't have to be elaborate, but having that time for yourself in a relationship is important because it allows you to understand what boundaries that you want to hold yourselves accountable to. It allows you to enhance and practice strength and strengthen your communication with others when you want to advocate for yourself and for your time. It helps you build a stronger sense of self. And of course, it helps you to understand your feelings. And again, it doesn't have to be elaborate. Okay, so before we go into unsafe relationships, Alyssa, we can take a couple questions.
Yeah, so I've got a question in our question box that says, how might applying an intersectional lens be helpful in analyzing relationships, past and future, where race, gender, age, ability might impact and create a power imbalance?
That's a wonderful question. So how might applying an intersectional lens be helpful in analyzing relationships, past and future, race, gender, and ability? Autumn Lees, would you mind elaborating a little bit on what you mean by that question? If I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like, and you're coming from an intersectional point, where we are addressing our past selves and our future selves and all of those different things that we want to hold ourselves accountable to, related to all of our different pieces of identity, and how we want to relate that to the relationships that we're having. I think if I'm understanding correctly, but if I am understanding the question correctly, I think it's important that you show up as your most authentic self, just coming from, again, the 5 A's, if you will. I think it's important that when you are showing up authentically and you're being able to show up for your boundaries and advocate for yourself, I think it helps to refrain from having those power imbalances because, again, it helps you to strengthen the relationship that you have with yourself. You're able to advocate for yourself and you're able to kind of come into a clarity, if you will, with what unsafe signs of a relationship that you want to stray away from, and what might kind of show up as a red flag for what maybe is not resonating with the intersectional points of your personality. So if someone is not recognizing any pieces of your gender, or if your age, or if that's feeling like it's something that's not being addressed wholeheartedly, and it feels like there's that power imbalance there, I think that that might be a sign of an unsafe relationship, in that sense. But I hope I understood that correctly. If I didn't, feel free to elaborate and we can come back to it. But that's a great question. Cool.
That was the only one that we have in the Q&A so far.
All right.
But if anyone has any other questions, feel free to pop them in there. And I think that Justin is also about to ask us a question. So
Yeah,
I'll
I
fill it
might
with
actually
him.
answer them
Okay,
now.
perfect.
I didn't want to give it all away too much, but talking a little bit about unsafe relationships. So, of course, learning how to recognize unhealthy dynamics in relationships is crucial in preventing violence or abuse. Autumn Lees, I think this might come into come into play a little bit with what you mentioned about power and control imbalances. So, intimate partner violence can happen to anyone, of course, regardless of age, gender, or background. And I want to emphasize that love should feel safe, supportive, and respectful, and not controlling or frightening. So a lot of the time, the cycle of abuse or unsafe relationships does follow power and control imbalances, and I'll talk a little bit about how that comes into play. But it usually follows a cycle. So there might be tension building, there might be violence, and then there might be the relief phase. So the relief phase usually occurs when there has been an incident of some sort, or you are feeling like tensions are really high, and then all of a sudden it feels like the honeymoon phase again, if you will. And then that cycle tends to repeat. But to kind of put it into more of a context for you, unsafe relationships can fall into many different categories. These are just a few that I want to point out, because a lot of the time this might feel normal to us. It might feel like something that we are used to, or we might not even be able to tell when a relationship might be heading in an unsafe direction. So I've broken it down into 4 categories just for the purpose of this workshop. And that might be controlling relationships, abusive relationships, codependent relationships, and manipulative relationships. So in controlling relationships, a person might manipulate or pressure the other into doing things that they don't want to do, whether that might be isolating them from friends and family or monitoring their every move. So again, this kind of comes into play with, taking away that individuality and agency in a relationship, which we already spoke about as being a healthy sign, right? Abusive relationships we spoke to a little bit, but of course this can come in all different forms. And a lot of the time it results in emotional distress and harm. Codependent relationships. This might be a tricky one to analyze, but a lot of the time, when a codependent relationship is becoming unsafe, it might mean that one person is relying too heavily on the other for their emotional well-being, and there might be that sense of insecurity when you're separated. So this might feel like maybe one person is holding all of the finances to their own, and they're kind of limiting you in that space, and that puts pressure on one person and makes them feel trapped in a relationship. Whereas manipulative relationships, there might be one person who uses tactics like guilt tripping, gaslighting, or other of those red flag qualities that we mentioned to get what they want. Like I said, I promised we would answer that little power and imbalance question. But when we're talking about power and control imbalances, as you'll notice with some of those relationships that I mentioned that are straying in towards the red flag or the unsafe side, they all have the power and control imbalance theme, if you will. Intimate partner violence is characterized by behaviors used by one person to gain and maintain that power and control over another. So what this means is thinking about if there's one specific person in the relationship who gets to make that decision. Do you feel bad if you question that power? Or do you feel obligated, like you have to listen to all of the decisions that they mention? This might be a sign that there is a power or control imbalance in that relationship, whether it is a platonic or romantic partnership. Of course, sometimes violence might feel normal, so it can be hard to tell when a behavior does become abusive, but that's why we talk about those healthy signs. That's why we talk about how to identify some of those warning signs and those red flags, just so that we're able to indicate when a relationship might be heading in that unsafe direction. But with that being said, I do again want to emphasize that abuse is never acceptable in any form, and it is okay to seek support if you need help. And I'll talk a little bit about that coming up now. So I won't spend too much time on why it is that someone might stay in an unsafe relationship, but I do want to just bring it up because I think it's important that we acknowledge that everyone's situation is unique, especially when we're going to be diving into how to support someone who might be in an unsafe relationship and how to foster that healthy communication. If there's one key takeaway piece here that I want you to stick with, it's that your role is to provide compassionate support, offer assistance, validate their experiences, and ensure a safe space for survivors to make their own choices. So there's many different reasons why someone might stay in an unsafe relationship, whether that might be, again, that financial dependence that we talked about. There might be that fear of retaliation, which could look like concern for leaving the relationship if they think that further harm might come to folks that are involved with them, with their children or their family. Of course, we have hope for change when we are hoping for the relationship to better itself. You might feel isolated in a relationship. There might be that stigma, whether it's cultural or religious beliefs that prevent you from leaving that relationship. But a lot of the time it can relate to the lack of awareness or resources. So that's why I'm glad that we get to spend some time talking about LGBTQ plus specific resources within Santa Clara County, because a lot of the time, I know for myself, when I was in an unhealthy relationship, it was really difficult for me to even recognize the severity of that relationship and of that situation. And I wish that I had access to more resources that were specific to me. And it was really hard to kind of find anything that was specific for a queer person. So a lot of the time, the reason why we do stick around, or at least from my own experience in an unsafe relationship, is because it's hard to tell what resources are available to us. But luckily, we will get to dive into that today. So I spent some time talking about healthy signs. We spent some time talking about warning signs and how to identify those power and control imbalances in an unhealthy relationship. And now I want to spend some time talking about supporting someone in an unsafe relationship. And the reason why I chose to focus on this piece is because I think a lot of these, you'll notice, will encompass the healthy relationship aspects that we talked about related to fostering healthy communication. So even if you think that this might not apply to you, or you feel like you might never be in a situation where you have to support someone, I encourage you just to take some mental notes, because a lot of these come into contact when you are having those supportive conversations and you are fostering healthy communication. Again, when you are supporting someone in an unsafe relationship, the main takeaway is that if someone discloses to you that they're a survivor, that your job is to listen and communicate that what they're experiencing is not their fault, and you can let them know that they deserve safety. Again, having these conversations can be tough, and it is tough a lot of the time for us to seek out available resources as an LGBTQ plus person. But we'll go into some tips on how you can assist someone and become that ally yourself. Okay, so the first pieces here are understanding the signs of both healthy and unsafe relationships. Pretty self-explanatory, right? So we spent some time again talking about what these signs look like. But I encourage you to model healthy relationships of your own, whether that's with your friends or with your family or with your romantic partners. Again, just so that you're able to identify what it is that you want to hold yourself accountable to and what you want to hold others accountable to. And also just to kind of exemplify what a healthy relationship looks like for others, right? Because when we're able to do this, it allows us to foster those healthy connections. We're able to set boundaries for ourselves on what we exhibit to be a healthy connection to be. So I think it's important that we are able to understand the signs of what these relationships can look like. When we're approaching these conversations, I think it's important that we do so privately, safely, and with kindness. Again, I think this goes for fostering healthy communication across the board. So if you are having trouble communicating about serious situations, or you're having trouble communicating or opening up to someone, try asking open-ended questions, because I think this helps to reduce pressure, build trust, and of course, encourage sharing without judgment. So an example of this might be asking an open-ended question like, what's been the most challenging part of your relationship lately? But of course, when you're asking these questions and having these conversations, you want to respect boundaries, and you want to reassure folks that when they are ready, that you are there for the support, but they don't have to share if they're not ready to. So if you're having trouble kind of phrasing this conversation, you can say something along the lines of, I understand if you're not ready to talk, and I'm here whenever you are. Okay, so I think it's also important that when we are fostering healthy communication and when we're offering support in our relationships, that we are practicing active listening and validation. What this means is showing that you care. So having safe body language, whether that is keeping eye contact, maybe it's light touching, but letting folks know that you care and that you are actively listening, and that you are validating their feelings and their experiences without minimizing or dismissing them. So this looks like expressing empathy and of course concern for their well-being. And some ways to practice active listening, whether that is through body language or outside of that, you could also practice paraphrasing what the person has shared, just to show that you are listening and that you are understanding. You can ask follow-up questions to show that you are empathizing with their situation, and just, of course, allowing them the space to openly share it with you whenever they're ready. When we are fostering healthy communication and you're talking about these relationships, it's important to also avoid judgment and offer support. So this looks like avoid blame or criticizing the person for their situation, and of course, supporting them in making their own decisions. We can also provide reassurance that seeking help is a sign of strength and that you deserve to feel safe and respected in all of your relationships, again, of all different configurations. Safety planning is a big one. So I think that this is a great way to practice building connections as well, because it is a proactive measure to enhancing personal safety. So when we're encouraging folks to share specific information with someone they trust, they can also create lists for themselves. For me, when I think of safety planning, I think of maybe sharing my location with my best friend if I'm going out for the night, or doing something along those lines. Maybe creating a code word for emergencies so that they know that they can rely on you if they need to quickly have a conversation about something that might be serious to them. Or keeping important documents and emergency contacts accessible is a great way of also practicing safety planning. But ultimately, I think it's important that we have a solid support network. Again, as we mentioned, being folks within the queer umbrella, it is often difficult to understand who we can be our most authentic self with, right? So I encourage you to reach out to safe adults, to friends, to local resources like the Q Corner, cultural, spiritual groups, peer support groups, which we'll go into in a sec, and just finding who you feel like you're most authentically yourself with and who you can be safest with. Because of course, for some of us, I know for myself, just speaking from my own personal experience, family might not always feel like the safest option when we are talking about how to foster these healthy relationships. So again, it's important to identify who you can be safest with and who your community is. I know I'm kind of speeding through these, but I want to get into the resources and make sure we have time for that. So I appreciate you sticking by me. But I know we touched on support systems, follow-up, and continued support as well. But once you have built those support systems and once you've identified what those look like, I think it's important in all forms of communication to follow up folks that you have offered support to ensure that they are feeling safe and getting help if they need to. But of course, just like we would want for folks to do for ourselves, we want to respect their decisions and continue offering support, even if they can't leave the relationship right away. And the reason why folks might not be able to leave a relationship right away could become a safety concern. So that's why I think it's important that you offer support and that you offer your availability there if needed, but you also are not pushing them to not jump into something if they're not ready for it yet. But we have come to the part that I was most excited about for this workshop, which is talking about the resources that are available to you. So I have been yapping to you for almost 45 minutes now. So you have access to me and Heart for all of your healthy relationship and prevention needs. You have a good idea of who I am. But of course, there are so many amazing different organizations in Santa Clara County that work directly with survivors. And I chose a few to highlight, but I do also want to mention that the Office of LGBTQ Affairs has an amazing resource guide on their county website, which focuses on all different aspects of resources tailored specifically to LGBTQ plus folks. So they do have a gender-based violence prevention resource guide, which highlights a bunch of different organizations, including Safe Chat, YWCA, Aki, Next Door Solutions, and we'll talk about what those look like in a sec. But I encourage you to take a look at this. They have physical and online copies as well. And the Office of LGBTQ Affairs is a great hub, if you will, for resource guides of all different aspects of any needs that you might have, even beyond those of gender-based violence. So if you have any resource needs for housing or mental health service support, there are plenty of resources out there. And I know that I am really pushing that there are so many, but it's only because doing my research for this project myself and for this workshop, I was discovering so many different resources that I wish I had access to for all these different needs in the past. And I think it's important that I just really highlight that there are so many out here. But just like I mentioned, the Office of LGBTQ Affairs is a great resource hub because they have compiled these resource cards and they are available for download. And this is just a snapshot of the ones that they highlight that are LGBTQ plus specific and welcoming. And I chose a few to highlight that I have worked with directly, if I can offer my own little 2 cents, if you will. But I'd love to highlight Next Door Solutions. I have worked closely with Maria, who is a wonderful youth coordinator at the Next Door Solutions org, and they've shared a little bit with me about the LGBTQIA support group that they offer. But if you're not familiar with Next Door Solutions, I do want to point out that they are the only standalone domestic violence agency in Santa Clara County and the largest provider of their services. Notice how I said that they are the only standalone DV agency in a county. Already that is kind of wild to me because I feel like we should have so many more, but they are the only agency in the county that specifically focuses on DV and intimate partner violence prevention. But I think that they are really amazing because they do offer that specific LGBTQI plus support group. The support group meets virtually on Wednesday evenings, and to join, you can contact them through phone. And once you are able to get a hold of someone, they have a 24-hour hotline as well, so they are always accessible to you. But once you join, a facilitator will contact you for a quick assessment just to make sure that the group is the right fit for you, or they might be able to refer you to one that might be better equipped to whatever your needs are. But I think Nextdoor Solutions is really amazing resource because they also offer crisis, legal, and housing support in addition to a bunch of different services as well. So this is just one that I chose to highlight. I'll go into a couple more. But before I do, yeah, thank you, Autumn Leaves. Yes, I love that you mentioned that they have a awesome group for LGBTQ plus folk. Yeah, I think from my own knowledge, they are one of, if not the only org that focuses on adult LGBTQ plus survivor groups. So really love to highlight them, especially because I think the group went on hiatus for a bit and they just restarted it recently. So I'm glad that it's an available resource for our community. I also want to highlight YWCA because they do phenomenal work specifically related to providing support for youth and LGBTQIA survivors. Unlike Nexer Solutions, they do provide in addition to Nexer Solutions, they do provide affirming, culturally responsive services, but it's not necessarily a focus that they have, but they do offer confidential services, including crisis intervention, counseling, case management, and support groups. So they do have support groups for queer and trans survivors of sexual assault and abuse. However, Next Door Solutions does have that weekly one, but YWCA is another option. But I chose to highlight YWCA because they also offer these services for youth. So I think it's important that we are highlighting that these resources are available for queer youth. So they offer crisis counseling for youth ages 5 and older, and to access the services, they also have a contact number here. And of course, their services are available in English and with translation assistance as well. So these are just two orgs, I think, that are doing great work within the county. aside from me. But yeah, would love to highlight an NDS and YWCA. However, I'm just checking my time. Perfect. Okay. I would love to highlight that if you are not ready to seek that in-person support, excuse me, or if you're not ready to speak with a person face to face, because of course that might be something that feels daunting to a lot of us, especially if we're navigating this for the first time, that there are virtual resources available. So if you feel like you would prefer to seek support on your own pace, there are many LGBTQ plus virtual resources available, but for this purpose, I chose to highlight the Trevor Project and Stop the Hurt. So like I mentioned, there are several public websites that specifically promote healthy relationships within our amazing community. But the Trevor Project specifically offers a ton of different resources relating to developing healthy relationships. They also have self-care guides. So I know I mentioned that it's important to foster that relationship with yourself. So if you need any information on that, they offer guides on that. There are also many educational articles that they provide for parents and supportive adults. So I'd like to highlight this piece because if there are any parents in this space or any parents that view this in the future, if you are having trouble navigating what dating might look like for your queer teen, they have guides on how to foster those healthy relationships. And they have a ton of different resources through their resource center online. And I threw the link down there. It's just trevorproject.org/resources. And in addition to Trevor Project, I wanted to highlight Stop the Hurt because Stop the Hurt specifically focuses also on LGBTQ plus healthy relationships. And they're really unique in the fact that they emphasize that everyone deserves a safe and healthy relationship. And their way of navigating these healthy relationship conversations is through personal stories, through support, and through offering different resources, kind of like the Office of LGBTQ plus Affairs does, if you will. However, of course, the Office of LGBTQ plus Affairs is more specific to the resources that we have here in Santa Clara County. And then these virtual resources are more general to the nation. All right. Okay, we are nearing the end, and I know I kind of rushed through that a little bit, but I want to make sure that if we have any questions that I have time to take them. But we spoke about so much in these 50 minutes that we were together, less than that. We spoke a little bit about how to identify healthy relationships and what are some healthy signs that we can hold ourselves accountable to. What are some healthy signs that we might want to look for in our own platonic and romantic relationships. We spoke about what some unsafe signs might be. And of course, we talked about how to foster healthy communication and how to support someone that might be in an unsafe relationship. So why does all of this matter? Why is it important that y'all stuck around with me for this hour today just to talk about what navigating healthy queer relationships can look like? My first point, nurturing healthy relationships is very important. Again, I push this so many times, but you deserve to feel safe and respected in all of the relationships you build, whatever that looks like for you. It's important to understand the signs of healthy relationships because, again, this protects our emotional well-being. It helps us to make informed choices, and it allows us to show up as our most authentic selves in all of the connections that we build. I also think it's important that we highlight the significance of building support systems. Again, like I mentioned, as LGBTQ plus folk, a lot of the time we don't have models to show us what a healthy relationships look like. So sometimes we have to show up as ourselves to model that relationship factors for other folks. So each of you in this space, you now hold more skills to cultivate your own healthy relationships, and you've learned how to have informed conversations about violence, and how to have those healthy conversations. And ultimately, hopefully, if you have stuck around with me, together we can create and share the resources needed to prevent violence for generations to come. So that's just a little bit of why it matters, why we're here today, right? Now is your time. If you have any questions at all, what are some questions that you might have related to identifying healthy and unsafe relationships? I know that was a lot of information for that short time that we had together, but I appreciate you letting me talk your ear off for a bit. Alyssa, I cannot see if there's questions for some reason, but if there is, let me know.
I will definitely monitor the chat for the next few minutes. Thank you to everyone who came out today for Justin's amazing presentation. Thank you, Justin, so much for being here today with all of us. This is an awesome presentation. I definitely learned a lot. Like I said, we're going to be on until 6:30. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in that Q&A section, and we can hopefully cover your questions before we end today. I'm just going to drop this survey in the chat one more time. This is a survey that we do here at all of our workshops at the Q Corner. It's a demographic survey that lets us know who's coming to our workshops and lets us continue to do the work that we do here at the Q Corner so we can do more amazing workshops with Justin and our other community partners. So if you don't mind filling that out for me, that would be great.
Yeah.
And you are more than welcome to skip any questions that you don't want to answer. But yeah, we'll be here for the next few minutes. If you want to have any questions that you feel free to drop, we'll be here. But if not, I hope you all have an excellent evening. And yeah, thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. On behalf of myself and Heart, I know that we are probably all surveyed out, but I also have a survey. If you want to let me know if there was anything that you would like to know more about, if you have any feedback. I also have a demographic survey that I use just for the purpose of making sure that we're reaching as many folks as possible and the work that Heart is doing is as meaningful as possible. But I wanted to just make sure that I shared this slide because if you are looking to stay in contact with Heart, if you're looking for more intimate partner violence prevention workshops, if you want to have more in-depth conversations about healthy relationships and any of the specific signs that we talked about, you can stay in contact with me. Through Instagram at Heart Program Santa Clara County. You can reach our program directly at heartprogram@fcservices.org, or you can contact me directly at jorts@fcservices.org as well. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to be a part of a Q Corner chat.
And we were honored to have you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Autumn-Lise, thank you so much for sharing that. I know I grazed over this a bit. But yeah, if either of y'all want to share any words that you feel that summarize today's workshop, I would love to hear them as well. Autumn-Lise, thank you so much for sharing supported. Yeah.
We also have a question about whether or not the
Amazing.
presentation slides will be available.
I am happy to share them.
Perfect. So if you want to get in contact with Justin, I know his email just flashed on the screen there. And we will also be putting this workshop up on our YouTube at some point. It might not be publicly listed, so we're probably going to send out a link to people who want to have access to it. So you'll be able to view this presentation again, and I'm sure Justin would not mind at all if you connected with him about getting the presentation slides.
Not at all, not at all. Yeah, I'm more than happy to share, and I appreciate you asking because I'm more than happy to have it spread as a resource.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, y'all. Have a great rest of your evening. Let's see, I have another question in the chat. Oh, someone was just letting us know that they joined from their browser and did not have access to the question feature. Thank you for letting me know that. I will go ahead and make sure that we know that moving forward when we do our Q Corner chats. That way we can make sure that you're getting your questions answered. So thank you for letting me know. This is my first Q Corner chat that I've run, so I apologize if there's any technical hiccups throughout the evening, but thank you all for your grace, and I will definitely take that into consideration when we do our next chat.
It was my first one too, Alyssa, so I think we kind of killed it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, like I said, we'll be on until 6:30. So again, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If not, have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me.
That was awesome, Justin.
Oh, thank you so much.
I hope we can do another one in the future that's like with some of the stuff we talked about. So
Yeah, I know that there might be some folks sticking around, but if y'all are interested in diving into any of the specific healthy relationship science or topics, I do workshops specifically on boundaries. I do workshops specifically on how to foster healthy conflict resolution. So I know I kind of gave like an overall snapshot of that today, but yeah, I'm more than open to diving into a specific topic and of course, really letting that conversation be its own thing.
awesome. Awesome. All right. It looks like we just have maybe our Q Corner people. So, all right, I think I'm gonna go ahead and end our time together. But
Okay.
it was great again seeing you. Thank you again for your time tonight. And I'll go ahead and email you about any back end stuff. But yeah, have a good
Amazing.
night.
Thank you for having me. It was so much
Yeah,
fun. Bye,
bye
everyone.
y'all.